For years, the promise of true Bitcoin decentralization, it seemed to be slipping away, kind of swallowed up by these massive industrial mining farms. And this wasn't just some abstract worry. It really raised fundamental questions about the network's resilience and, well, who actually held the power?
Right, the centralization concern.
Exactly. But what if the very forces that centralized mining are now maybe creating the conditions for it to return? Maybe even to your living room.
That's a fascinating angle.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into this resurgence of at-home Bitcoin mining. It's often overlooked, I think.
Definitely.
We're going to pull insights straight from an interview we had with Canaan's vice president, Dr. Looney, to really unpack what he calls this perfect storm, the economic, tech, and cultural shifts making it happen.
Yeah.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to get a handle on what this means, for decentralization, for your own financial sovereignty, maybe even for how we use energy in the future.
And what's really interesting here, I think, is how those core Bitcoin values like decentralization, that they're being reinforced now through tech that's just becoming much more accessible. It genuinely feels like a shift, moving away from that industrial dominance back towards the individual.
A return to roots, maybe.
In a way, yeah. It definitely echoes the early days.
That's a powerful way to frame it. Now, when we talk about decentralization, we do have to acknowledge, the big industrial players have dominated mining for a long time.
For sure.
But what's Canaan's history here? They're often credited with the first functioning ASIC Bitcoin miner, aren't they?
Absolutely. And Dr. Lee really emphasized that Canaan's commitment here to decentralization, it isn't just some recent marketing spin.
Okay.
It goes right back to 2013. Their founder, NG Zhang, introduced the Avalon One that was the world's first ASIC miner.
Right, the Avalon One.
But what was really remarkable, and it says a lot about their philosophy from the start, is that he open-sourced the chip design.
Wow, okay. Open sourcing the design for like a brand new piece of tech. That sounds counterintuitive almost for a company trying to lead.
It does, doesn't it? But it was a massive catalyst back then.
How so? What did that actually do?
Well, by putting the design out there, it directly inspired and frankly empowered individuals all over the world to try mining independently. It wasn't just about sharing tech, it genuinely spread the hash power around, lots of different hands, which fundamentally made the network stronger, more resilient.
Right, distributed it.
Exactly. And it set a precedent. It kind of pushed other big players later on to at least think about more distributed approaches too.
So it wasn't just a one-off historical thing. Dr. Lin is saying Canaan's current home mining line, especially this Avalon Q, it carries that original mission forward.
That's how they see it, yes.
Yeah.
They view their role as creating tools that widen access, that let individuals participate in a meaningful way. It's about upholding those core Bitcoin values we talked about: decentralization, financial sovereignty, and also thinking about long-term sustainability. It's maybe less about just chasing the absolute highest hash rate number.
And more about the bigger picture.
Exactly. More about the spirit of Bitcoin, you could say.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. This whole conversation, it suggests it's about more than just, processing power. It's about giving agency, giving power back to the individual within the Bitcoin system.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's this unique mix of factors making it possible right now. Dr. Light called it a perfect storm.
He did. And this perfect storm, it's a really potent mix. You've got big shifts in energy, how it's generated, how it's used. Then there's the hardware innovation moving really fast.
Right.
And on top of that, these evolving cultural values around, personal control, digital assets, DIY approaches, it's all coming together to make home mining look more viable, more promising than it has in a long, long time.
Okay, let's break that down. Starting with energy, because that's usually the biggest hurdle for home miners, right?
Yeah.
The cost, what shifts are happening there?
Yeah, energy's key. And the real aha moment here isn't just, say, cheaper solar panels, though that helps.
Okay.
It's the shift in how you can actually monetize your energy use. Think about it. Your miner isn't just earning crypto. It could be actively cutting your electric bill, or even making you money by selling power back to the grid.
Really? How does that work?
Well, first, yes, the costs for things like solar and wind have dropped significantly. So home miners can genuinely offset their electricity costs if they generate their own power. That's a big piece.
Okay, so self-generation is one part.
Yeah.
But you mentioned selling power back.
Correct. Many regions now have pretty favorable net metering programs. Basically, you get credit, sometimes even cash, for the extra power your system generates and feeds back to the grid.
Interesting.
Plus, you have time-of-use pricing becoming more common. So smart miners can game the system a bit, run their machines hardest during off-peak hours when electricity is cheapest.
Arbitrage.
Exactly. So suddenly it's not just mining anymore, it's becoming this sort of comprehensive, homegrown energy strategy. You're optimizing how you use power, maybe even generating revenue from it.
That completely reframes the economics, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, beyond energy, what about the hardware? Are these still the super loud, power-hungry machines we imagine?
Not at all. That's the second pillar of this storm. Canaan's newer machines, like the Avalon Q, the Mini 3, the Nano 3S, they're really designed to be plug and play.
Yeah.
Much more affordable, much more efficient.
Okay.
And crucially, they've tackled the heat problem.
The heat. Wait, so you're saying it's not just making Bitcoin, it's actually, what, heating your house too? How does that work? Isn't that normally just waste?
That's the ingenious part, the heat recapture. It basically transforms the miner into a dual-purpose device. It earns Bitcoin, sure, but it also provides useful heat for your home.
Yeah.
It's about using every single watt efficiently, turning what used to be just a byproduct into something valuable, an asset, really.
Okay, that's clever. So we have energy shifts, hardware innovation. Dr. Lee also mentioned a cultural shift playing a role. What's driving that?
Yeah, the cultural piece is important too. There just seems to be this renewed hunger for decentralization, a stronger DIY ethic around energy use, a desire for more financial sovereignty. And with Bitcoin being more visible again, more people are getting curious, getting involved. You see these communities of home miners popping up, growing fast, sharing tips, setups, supporting each other.
Right, the community aspect.
That cultural momentum, it kind of acts like a force multiplier for the tech and economic changes.
So you put it all together, the economic drivers, the better hardware, this growing cultural interest, and yeah, it paints a clear picture. Home mining isn't just making a comeback. It seems poised for some real growth.
I think so.
And talking about the tech, the Avalon Q specifically sounds like it was really engineered for the home. What were the key design choices there?
Dr. Lee pointed out a few critical things. First, it's built to run on a standard 110-volt outlet. That's huge. No special wiring, no complex setup needed.
Genuinely plug and play then.
Pretty much. Then there's the noise. That's the Q in Avalon Q, quiet. It runs at about 45 decibels.
Okay, what's that comparable to?
Like a household fridge. Compare that to traditional miners, which can easily hit 75 decibels, more like a vacuum cleaner running constantly.
Big difference if it's in your living space.
Huge difference. Makes it actually feasible for a shared environment.
And the user experience. Easy for a non-expert to manage.
That seems to be the goal. They have the Avalon Family app, simple interface. You can access it remotely, switch between different power modes like efficiency or performance, depending on your needs.
Okay.
Every part of it, Dr. Lee said, from the power supply to the acoustics, was thought through for fitting into daily life. More like a smart home device than, a piece of industrial server gear.
But okay, how does it actually perform compared to those giant industrial rigs?
Yeah.
Can it compete on pure processing power?
That's a really important distinction to make. The Avalon Q isn't trying to go head-to-head with, say, their top-tier industrial rig like the A15 Pro on raw hash rate alone.
Right.
It clocks in around 90 terahashes per second, which is solid, definitely good performance for its class, and it's efficient, too. But its value proposition is just different. Its advantages really come out in those practical home scenarios where the standard profitability math doesn't quite apply.
So if I'm getting this right, it's less about the absolute highest number of hashes and more about optimizing all those other factors unique to being at home.
Precisely. Its value comes from things like drastically cutting your energy bill if you have solar, or offsetting your heating costs using that heat recapture, especially if you live somewhere cold.
Okay.
Plus, in some places, residential setups get treated differently by regulators, maybe more favorably than big commercial operations.
Interesting.
So fundamentally, it appeals more to people mining for maybe long-term Bitcoin holding, or because they believe in supporting network decentralization or want that financial sovereignty. It's not necessarily aimed at someone trying to maximize immediate high-volume profit like an industrial farm would.
Right.
And this brings up an important point, I think. It's not just about the mining stats. It's about redefining the whole mining ecosystem for people who really believe in Bitcoin's tech and its potential benefits, making it something standard in their home, perhaps.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you factor in the global regulatory picture. That must create a real patchwork effect on where home mining actually takes off, right?
Oh, absolutely. The way regulations and grid policies interact, it creates these really distinct regional patterns for home mining adoption. It's fascinating.
Give me an example. Like Canada, they have cheap hydro, right?
Exactly. Take Quebec, for instance. Amazing hydropower advantages seems like a perfect spot. But even there, you can run into specific crypto tariffs or permitting hurdles that make it trickier than you'd think. Just looking at the power cost, it's not always straightforward.
So even cheap power isn't the whole story.
Yeah.
What about somewhere like Europe, where energy is generally pretty expensive?
Well, in Europe, interestingly, those high energy costs and the EU's focus on carbon policies actually drive innovation. They push miners hard towards maximum efficiency and using renewables.
Okay.
And some European countries are even experimenting with incentives for miners who agree to be interruptible loads.
Interruptible loads, what's that?
It means they basically get paid to temporarily shut down their miners if the grid needs stabilizing, like during peak demand. So the miner isn't just consuming power, it's potentially becoming an active participant in grid stability.
Huh. That's a completely different model, turning the miner into a grid asset.
It is very different thinking.
And the U.S. We hear a lot about Texas being pro-mining.
Yeah, in the U.S., you've got states like Texas with low rates attracting miners, but then you have states like New York putting up restrictions.
Right.
And a key thing there is how your setup gets classified. Is it residential or commercial? That can totally change the rate structure you pay.
Okay.
So this patchwork of policies, it's not just red tape, it's actively shaping where home mining grows and how it grows globally. So for you, the listener, it really means keeping an eye on your local policies is pretty crucial. They could directly impact your opportunities here.
So it's not just crypto-specific rules, but how existing energy policy and zoning kind of intersects with mining, which leads us nicely into this idea of smart home integration and maybe a totally new future business model.
That's right. The Avalon family app, as we mentioned, lets users manage modes, track temps, uptime, basic stuff. But the bigger vision, as Dr. Lee described it, goes beyond just convenience. It's about making your home actively work for you. By earning Bitcoin, yes, but also by powering decentralization and, like we discussed, slashing heating bills. That's what they're framing as next-gen smart.
And they're encouraging people to get creative with this. I heard something about a challenge.
Yeah, they launched the hashtag Canaan Heat Flip Challenge. It's basically a social media trend. They started to get people thinking differently about recycling that energy, that heat.
Okay. What kind of uses are people finding?
Oh, it's genuinely creative. I mean, you wouldn't normally think your Bitcoin miner could help you bake bread.
Right.
Or keep chickens warm.
Seriously.
Chickens. Apparently. We've seen examples like, warming a specific room, drying laundry, helping dough rise, and yes, even providing a bit of warmth for chicken coops.
Wow.
It really does flip the script on thinking about waste heat, doesn't it? Makes it a resource.
It absolutely does. And thinking bigger picture, looking out towards, say, the 2030s, Dr. Lee suggested miners will need to evolve beyond just the traditional hash per dollar game. That sounds like a major shift for the whole industry.
It really is a structural shift. As Bitcoin's block rewards continue to decrease and the mining difficulty keeps rising, those transaction fees become much more important.
They replace the block reward as the main income.
Gradually, yes. That's the expected path, which likely means more income volatility, tighter profit margins, and an even stronger focus on having super efficient, really responsive infrastructure.
Okay.
And miners will likely get much more deeply integrated with the energy sector itself, tapping into what they call stranded resources. Think like burning off flare gas at oil wells that's normally wasted.
Right, using wasted energy.
Or using renewable energy that's curtailed, meaning it's generated but can't be used by the grid at that moment. And doubling down on those heat recovery systems or grid balancing services we talked about.
So they become key players in the energy grid, essentially finding ways to monetize energy or infrastructure that's currently underused or wasted.
Yeah, exactly. You can even imagine hybrid facilities emerging places that are both Bitcoin mines and maybe AI compute hubs or edge data centers, all sharing the same power and cooling infrastructure.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah, the miner of tomorrow, as Dr. Lee put it, won't just be securing the Bitcoin network. They'll be optimizing energy use, building multi-purpose infrastructure, and figuring out how to turn waste streams into value.
It's clear that hardware makers, like Canaan, have a really big, almost foundational role in enabling all this. What responsibility do they feel they have in ensuring mining power, that hash rate, stays distributed and accessible to individuals?
Dr. Lee was very direct about this. He said the development of their home mining series is, for them, a direct expression of their commitment to safeguarding Bitcoin's decentralization.
Okay.
He specifically linked it back to NG Zhang's original decision, way back in 2013, to open source that first ASIC chip design. That set a precedent for distributed mining, and he sees their current work as continuing that legacy.
So their strategy isn't just about moving product. It's fundamentally about trying to build a more resilient, more distributed Bitcoin network, literally from the ground up in people's homes.
Precisely. They believe that by providing professional-grade tools, but engineering them to be efficient, quiet, and usable with standard home power. Well, that makes mining accessible at the household level.
Right.
And that directly contributes to decentralization, which ultimately benefits the long-term health and strength of the entire network. It's a key piece of keeping Bitcoin robust.
So wrapping this all up, we've journeyed from the historical roots of decentralized mining through this perfect storm that's enabling its quiet resurgence today. We looked at the innovative tech making it feasible in homes, the complex global policy landscape, and even glimpsed this ambitious vision for integrating mining into smart homes and future energy systems.
Yeah, it's quite a story unfolding, and it really raises an important question, I think, for you, the listener. What might it actually look like when more and more homes aren't just consuming energy, but are actively participating in this distributed value-generating network? Could that genuinely redefine what we mean by a smart home in the next decade? And how could that fundamentally alter our relationship, not just with technology, but with resources, too?
Definitely something to mull over.
Yeah.
Thinking about how these quiet, rough missions happening maybe even in the living room next door might just be reshaping the world around us.